report to Andy and not to me, because it's confusing. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, so we are on council member reports. Councilmember Ferguson's, we have an unfortunate preposition here, but Councilmember Ferguson's report on travel to Washington, D.C. for high-speed rail. I would have said regarding high-speed rail. And apologies for the lateness of the hour. It's after 1, so I'll try to be as clear as possible. So on March 7th was a travel day. March 8th and 9th met with 11 members of Congress and or their staffs. I was accompanied by Larry Klein from the city of Palo Alto, who's the chair of their high-speed rail subcommittee, as well as Ravi Mehta, who is our legislative advocate in Sacramento. It was really a great two-way opportunity for education. Palo Alto had a little briefing booklet that really, through letters and resolutions that the actions that the council had taken, really provides both a kind of an encapsulation of their policy regarding high-speed rail. And in fact, we looked at this in our subcommittee meeting on Monday and thinking, wow, this would be a great type of thing to have for our, for our city, so that we could, give this out in a similar manner. But it was very effective to be able to leave this with the staff members. And it serves, if you read through this, it serves to bring anybody up to speed, kind of in a half an hour or less on Palo Alto's. And similarly, obviously we're a different city, but a lot of our policy positions are similar. So I was able to make that point. Pretty much I stuck to the points laid out in the memo that I sent to Glenn on March 3rd, which he responded to. I had laid out 5 points. Really, I stuck to the first 4 because Palo Alto's position about electrification is they don't want to spend high-speed rail funds on electrification. I think ours is maybe not quite as clear-cut as that. So I figured wanted to keep a crisp, clear message in meeting with the congressional staffs as a first visit. So I mostly avoided that topic, except when we did have a fairly far-ranging discussion with Anna Eshoo on that. So I would like to make my letter of March 3rd, as well as Glenn's response to it, part of the public record of this meeting, part of attached to the minutes. So, we discussed with the members of Congress and their staffs. Again, I met 5 members of Congress personally. And that ranged from just meeting in the hallway to a full 45-minute discussion. It was really, we talked a lot about matters of state and federal fiscal policy and kind of the tenor of the fiscal discussion in Washington. There was a tremendous amount of concern about taking on more bond debt. And that was one of the concerns with the high-speed rail, federal high-speed rail funds being allocated, is that it requires a state match, which means the sale of bonds, which we can't really pay the debt on. There's a real concern about taking on additional debt. It was a really fascinating discussion with Anna Eshoo, I will say. The Bay Area Caucus is very supportive of the positive train control issue. I mean, it's a little bit off topic from high-speed rail. She was very adamant that she was against California high-speed rail, capital H, capital S, capital R. I mean, she said, I'm hoping I'm saying the words correctly, that they botched it. So, but I think she was not, she's not against Caltrain modernization, let me put it that way. So, very interesting to hear her perspective. So,
okay, who did you meet? Can you list the folks you met with?
I can do that. So this is with their offices, not necessarily with the congressional member himself or herself. Devin Nunez, 21st District, Gary Miller, 42nd District, Ed Royce, 40th District, Kevin McCarthy, 22nd, Jackie Spear, 12th, Daryl Issa, 49th, Tom McClintock, 4th, Jerry Lewis, 41st, Anna Eshu, 14th, Jeff Denham, 19th, and Dan Lundgren, 3rd. So I guess in summary on the fiscal stuff, it was really, how state and federal fiscal actions would impact Menlo Park and Palo Alto, and also, Robbie is representing Atherton and Pico Rivera as well. So kind of how those fiscal issues will impact our cities.
How up to speed were these folks on the ridership figures, the lack thereof, and the business plan?
I'm glad that you brought that up. It was actually a mix. Some people were up to speed. They knew that the ridership numbers were fatally flawed and that they shouldn't be relied on for routing and sizing decisions. But others really weren't really up to speed. And also the business plan would be the other thing. We talked about that kind of in terms of sort of fiscal responsibility and the requirement of Prop 1A not to have an operating subsidy. So just emphasizing the importance of having a complete and credible business plan before expenditure of any funds for construction.
Okay. Any questions?
Did you get a sense from some of the different staff or members on, do they vary or, in terms of where they're standing? For example, ISA's position, what did his staff say where he is and some of the others?
I think they were more in a position of, Kevin McCarthy, I will say, put out a press release the day that we were there, the first morning we were there, saying, just coming right out against high-speed rail. So, there's a variety. I don't think I could really generalize. I know that Robbie would have detailed notes on that.
Is there any written report?
Robbie Maida, our legislative advocate, will be putting together a written report for the council. And he wasn't clear about whether he'd be attaching it to his quarterly report or whether he'd be doing it separately, but it should be forthcoming in the next couple of weeks at the very latest.
Okay, and in the report, can you put exactly who was met with, if it was staff or who it was? Ask him to put that too.
All right.
And when is the last time he has submitted a report?
We sent one out about 6 weeks ago, I think. It would have been attached to the city manager's newsletter.
Okay.
I just want to bring up, I think there was a lot of confusion over the lack of agendizement of the projected expenses for the trip. I think I brought it up at 3 different meetings before, the final meeting when we talked about it here. Can you explain why that was not on the agenda for us to take action on that night?
Yeah, I think, I take responsibility for a portion of that, because even tonight, 2 council members gave reports on some committees you belong to and things you're going to and expenditures. We do have a policy that was adopted back in the 90s that says that any out-of-state travel requires council approval. So in the relationship of going through and Council Member Fergusson going to Washington, D.C., we just I didn't take the step to put it on the agenda because it didn't come to my point in enough time to do that. So we now making clear that when council members are going to travel, we're going to make sure you have the information regarding that, and if you're going to be going out of state, what steps you have to take in order to make that happen, because typically we would pass on to the city clerk, and I didn't give that to her. So that was my responsibility to make that happen.
Okay, thanks, Glenn. I will report that the costs that I incurred for this trip were on the order of $1,400. That's out of my pocket, and I have not decided yet whether to bring that to council for a reimbursement vote.
Glenn, I just have one question about what you just said. I mean, in looking at the policy that you gave to everybody, I thought that it said implementation of the policy is the responsibility of city council for council members and appointed officials, and the responsibility of the city manager for all employees. Is that not?
Well, that's correct. And basically that means is that I don't have the authority to tell a council member you can or cannot go to an event. But basically the way we handle it in the office is when we know you're going to an event, the staff will actually post it in the council office as per the policy. And we typically do that. We very seldom have out-of-state travel. So in this case, it just didn't ring our bell to put it on the agenda. But typically, it's the council's responsibility to make that.
Okay, and were any other council members asked if they wanted to attend that trip to Washington, D.C.?
Ask that question? No,
Okay.
not of me.
Rich was. I mean, yeah.
I was asked. I said no.
Okay.
Oh, that's all they said I asked. I'm sorry.
Okay, so Rich, you were the only one that was asked.
Yeah, I said no. And obviously, it would have been appropriate because of the PCC and all the work that I've done, but I didn't think it was something I wanted to do.
I just felt it was a very important opportunity to have our voice heard on this, and came up rather suddenly in the subcommittee meeting on the 14th, I guess that was, and we had several emails back and forth, and then several emails with staff.
Yeah, I guess, on this issue, having a subcommittee on this issue, obviously Peter and I aren't privy as to what goes on, although I've talked with you, Glenn, about the fact, you let me know now that every other meeting is open to the public. But before I talked to you about that, that wasn't something that I was even aware of. And I don't know if Peter was either.
No, I wasn't.
Okay. So I think that, when you have
It's
a
in the
subcommittee.
press. We did talk about this in the almanac, that we were making this public.
Okay, that may be the case. And, I could be the only one that didn't see it, and that could be.
Okay.
Although it sounds like Peter didn't see it either, so, okay. So I just think that when, it's difficult when you have such a hot topic, that when you have two new council members who, are not able to attend those meetings all the time to know what's going on, and then to suddenly, there was no lead up to it, why it was so important, what the agenda was, there was nothing, and that became a problem. So, and I think one thing I talked to staff about is that for that April 12th meeting, but it looks like we're going to do budget issues instead, but one idea had come up was to have a high-speed rail study session. And I think that we should, as a council, at some point do that when it can fit into to our calendar.
Yeah,
No, I agree.
I would concur. Just, as a new council member, I'm certainly very familiar, but when we're talking about defining the right way, et cetera, I want to make sure that I'm as up to speed as I can be, so that I can be as helpful as I can. And I just kind of felt like flying blind a little bit. So.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with the idea of at some point having a full council discussion on this. It would be good.
I will make one comment that I think the natural awkwardness of council and travel. I have a personal inclination that I do not believe council members should have to travel much. I don't believe they should go to LA for meetings. I think that we are hired for Menlo Park, and we're a 30,000 person city. And if you want to meet with people of stature, you can meet with them at their offices, Congress people, communicate plenty of times online, and find your information wherever you want. It's a personal thing that I've taken, that I believe in, because I think there's way too many public official junkets all over the place, and they cost a ton of money, $2,000, $3,000. You got to fly to these places. I've never seen huge value out of them. Other people believe completely different, and I respect that. My own personal opinion is that most of this is a lot of bureaucratic travel and a lot of people sitting down and talking at meetings and these round tables and having free lunch, get on a plane, come back, do a councilman report, and we all move on with our lives, and that's my own inclination. So I did not want to go to D.C. for that reason. I do not go to L.A. meetings for mayor sessions and all those things for the same reason. I don't find the huge value. I think I can put more value into Menlo Park by staying home and doing it here. So that's my own personal opinion, and I do not think that that should override somebody else's personal opinion. That's what we're going to have to deal with as council members.
Right.
I'll hear you guys say you're going to travel, and my mind will be like, I don't know why you're going there, but I am not going to get in the way of you doing it because you got elected the same way I did, and I do not think I have a right to veto that when you could probably bring value. I just don't know. It's my own personal rules for myself.
Yeah, I appreciate your thoughts on that. When I was looking at the Menlo Park policy, there was an Exhibit A attached to it that had a chart of conferences and meetings. And it's interesting to look in there that, several of them are that League of California Cities. So I'm just going to bring that up.
I think we might want to, I don't want to waste valuable council time on hashing through that policy, but I think that list is pretty outdated in terms of what's relevant today, although some still are relevant.
I mean, we could certainly say that the league is not relevant and we could not be in it. That's certainly a discussion we can have about not being in it.
It's not about the league. It's just about your own personal, what you think your obligation is. And that's where I think Kelly came up and wanted to go to D.C., and I sat there while she said it, and in my brain was going, I just said I didn't want to go for my own reasons. But I was not going to stand up and say Kelly shouldn't go. She can't bring value. Kelly should bring that to council and explain why she thinks she should go. And I respect Kelly enough to think she could get something out of it, as I would for anybody that was going on a travel. My personal conviction is different, and that's just where I am. And that's the thing about council. I mean, it's a team sport, but I mean, we're all different individuals, and we're going to have different values on that. And that's been my feeling. If staff went to these things, I'd say, what'd you get out of it? I mean, half the industries in the world spend billions on these conferences that are just kind of get-togethers. So it's just a personal opinion. Somebody's probably gone to too many conferences. Let's put it that way. All right. That's it. Public comment.